let's talk about the Scout. But I'm just going to go through some of the pros and cons. I originally flew a suitcase frame high hang point 172 Black Devil. Stay tuned. It'll pendulum you. I switched out to a Helix Prop. The stitching on these things, bottoms like ripped out I think on like my first flight. Pretty disappointed in those. Stay tuned. However, I have seen them work. Oh, some morning coffee. Black cabin in Tahoe. Awesome. We're saying goodbye to Olin today. He has a new home. It'll probably be renamed a she. Everyone gave me crap for naming it a he and putting it on my back. I haven't figured out what to name Super Scout over here, but I'm just gonna go through, mostly for my mom, why you would spend so much money when something is just as comparable over here. Just some of the things that I've learned after flying this for 70 hours and now being on the Scout for about 10 hours. Granted, I did fly this one with a little bit bigger wing for most of the time. Flew it with a 24-meter Scirocco, and exclusively I've only flown this one with the 19-meter Scirocco too. So I've never flown this one with a bigger wing. But I'm just going to go through some of the pros and cons. Stay tuned. Alright, to start things off, I learned on King Gook frames with a Polini 80 on them down at the Salton Sea, so it's a super easy spot to learn. I originally flew a suitcase frame high hang point and a Coors 172 Black Devil. When I got on this one, I immediately noticed the difference with having a swan neck hang point with weight shift arms. Definitely different to launch. You feel the wing more, and requires, because it has so much power with the Monster 185, it really requires some really good throttle control to not start to make it torque or twist on takeoff, especially at elevation. Down at sea level, you take like 3 steps and hit the throttle and you can jump in your seat, which is a really bad habit, and take off. So I went with the SUP air harness. APCO makes one as well. The problem with, I think, the APCO one is that it doesn't have these really long side pockets that you can fit a coffee mug into. And that is essential, I think, for any flight, is to be able to have your coffee with you. You can also zip these off and use them as a side mount reserve. Just make sure you put it on the side that you're supposed to put it on for whatever spinning prop you have, because you want more weight on one side as opposed to the other. Super comfortable harness. I had the Polini throttle on it that I shaved off a little bit. I really like this throttle, except that it pinches my finger right here, but I just put some duct tape on that on my next one. Yeah, super comfy harness, super easy to get in and out of. One thing that I liked about the Scout is that their ground handling straps go through the harness, and this one doesn't have a spot for it to go through. That's the only thing that I would really change about it, is that I would run this strap, I'd cut a hole right there and run it straight down to the frame so it's not on the outside and getting caught maybe on whatever's in your pocket, that it would run down the inside like the Scout does. But all in all, great harness. Once you get those ground handling straps measured out right, makes it really easy to get in and out of and do foot drags. Okay, I switched out to a Helix Prop. And the reason I did that is because I'm so light. I'm only, man, all geared up with boots on and everything, 145, 150 pounds. So I felt that the E-Prop spun up too quick and it gave me too much throttle response. And this felt more like a 4-stroke, like it rolled on the power. Even if I was punching it a little bit, it rolled it on nice and smooth. One of the things I really liked about this setup was the 18-liter gas tank. People say that that blocks too much, wind, but having that extra gas and not having to carry the extra bladder in front of you when you're on something that's a 12-liter just made everything easy for long cross countries. I never used the full capacity because on this engine, even at altitude, I was really only burning like 3 liters an hour on a 24-meter wing. So my cruise was like right around 5 grand. So I was getting super good fuel mileage. I never had to fill it up to 18. You can check the video of me flying around over 70 some odd miles around the lake. I think I put 12 liters in it. I went from South Lake Tahoe to the Lee Vining Airport, which is 100 miles. Of course, I used the wind, but I think I left with it full, but I got there and still had 8 liters left and was able to do a flight down there with my friends for about an hour and a half and still landed with plenty of fuel. Helix Prop 120. And I went with the 120 because I know someone that flies tandems with this, and they use a 120. Not saying that 125 wouldn't work. I don't think a 130 would fit inside this frame, but flying at altitude, this thing climbed like a champ and kept the RPMs higher as you go up in elevation with the 120 on it. One of the things that I did is I put some rubber spacers right here and got a bigger bolt, and I moved the engine plate mount out on the left side and left it with just one rubber spacer over here on the right side, and tweaking the engine just a little bit, it helps with any type of feeling of torque. Now, I'm not recommending that anyone do that to their own personal motor. I've done it to a few, and by shifting the motor inside the cage, it pushes the thrust line more up through your left shoulder, and it definitely helps out with a motor that's this powerful with someone this light. If you were over like 160 pounds, I don't think you'd probably ever really notice. But if you're launching at elevation, sometimes at like 8,000 feet of AGL, when you look at the density altitude index, and you're really light, this really helps. And having a prop that spins up slower. But now, let's talk about the Scout. So first thing when people found out that I was getting a Scout is everybody talks about, oh, that thing's so heavy. Maybe if you put it on a scale. Even though it's heavier than my past unit, it is absolutely amazing feeling when it's on your back. So you don't feel the extra weight, and it's huge, but you don't feel the tipsy-turvy, like there's a big cage out around you. All the weight is so compact that it feels like you just have a really nice backpack on. One of the reasons, though, that I ended up spending all the extra money to go with a Scout was when I looked at these lightweight arms that Kangoo puts on their motors, they have a lot of lateral movement. These have no lateral movement to speak of. And when you look at the thrust line, with this at the lowest setting, meaning the lightest setting for me, it puts the thrust line a little bit below, which is called this hinge point. And what that'll do is when you punch the power, it'll pendulum you a little bit. If you run this thing, you're like a little bit heavier, you're running it, that's probably for someone that's like up to like 150. If you're above 150, like 165, maybe to like 170, you could run it there. and then, you know, 75 to 85. Remember, you're going to hang check this to make sure, because it depends on how much fuel you're running and everything else and how much you weigh. It's going to move it down lower, bring your wing attachment down lower, and then your thrust line is going to be more in line with the center of that, because you want your thrust line basically going right through where your wing attaches, and then you don't get that penduluming effect. I don't feel it at all on the Scout. I felt it a little bit with Olin here. And when I started kind of going upside down and doing things, I don't know. These moved a lot, and there's only one bolt that goes through. And just like everybody talks about, you know, like, that's your oh Jesus bolt. If it goes, you're going to be hanging really weird and trying to land. So, not going to happen over here. That thing is not a bolt. It is really stout. So you'll see on the Sup Air, it has a compartment down here, which you could fit a tight sleeping bag into with your bivy sack. Of course, most of us run just a different pack up high. We don't really like stuffing a lot of stuff in there because it makes it a little more difficult to run with. But you can see these stick out, and when traveling and having to put your unit in a van, this thing breaks down, boom, super quick, quicker than the Scout. However, these that stick out, it just made it kind of difficult to like strap to the wall of a van. I'd always have to put like a water weenie on those and then, you know, strap it in. The Scout folds up so flat. You can see like it just folds up super flat. It does not have a storage compartment underneath. It actually has a reserve container, which you could use as a storage compartment. And then it has kind of this cheesy, super simple speed bar attachment, whereas the Sup Air has a little bit nicer setup on it. This one already has the power floats on it. This harness makes you feel like you're in a 5-point racing seat in a car. The padding that's next to the swing arms is absolutely amazing. And getting in and out of this seat to foot drag with these amazing leg straps is so easy. Absolutely amazing. As you can see, I'm still all the way back on the lightest setting there is. I tried to do these two. You could talk to Scout and find out what they recommend. But when I tried to go through these two, again, I'm just not heavy enough. I think if you're like 165 to 175, you could do those two. They recommend this last one out here for super light pilots, which, being only like 150 pounds, I probably am. Most people my size don't fly a 185. They'd, you know, fly an 80 because it's easy. But living high at altitude, I need all the power I can get to get over some of these mountains. So one thing I will mention about the Scout harness is, you see these right here? These are lightweight reserve risers, and they're sewn in to the harness and are routed. Make sure you always route them around your gooseneck arms. They're routed down into this container. You could probably also take them out of that container and route them into your front mount. I think that's absolutely awesome. One other thing is with the buckles that are on the Scout harness, there's a little green line so you know it's going in the right way. So it'd be pretty difficult to buckle the wrong buckle to the wrong buckle. Whereas on the Sup Air harness, there is no safety measure like that. You could essentially probably buckle a leg strap into your chest strap, but you probably figure that out when you ran out of buckles. Sup Air, on the other hand, has it stitched in, right, for routing the reserves, and it has it on both sides. So whether you do a side mount reserve or a front mount reserve, it has the routing. But then in here, you know, you have to attach, you know, one of those, I always get them from the wing manufacturers, but the stainless steel like U-bolts that then attach to your risers that go to your reserve. So they're not sewn in. And I don't know, I just really like the fact that they're already sewn in on the Scout, and they're the thin, lightweight ones. So you can see on the Scout, they have their own prop. It's a Scout branded prop, and it's a 132. And it's like a hybrid between the Helix and an E-prop. And I really like the way it handles and performs. I also really like the way that Scout did their throttle routing. Really a lot of attention to detail. And I also really like their cooling shroud. Way better than the Bitarazi one that attaches with little pins coming out, and you have to like pull on it and you think you're gonna break it, and then safe start. Little annoying when you don't know how it works, because you like start it and it dies, and start it and it dies, and you're like, what's going on? And it's because the RPM's going too high too quickly, and it just kills it. But a great safety feature. So all in all, what do I think? I think Kanguk makes a great setup. I think for the price point, you can get one through Kanguk USA, and you can get any motor put on it, and it's an awesome setup for, let's say, $6,500. Now, this one, it's gonna be like $9,000. Like $9,500 sometimes, depending on all the options and stuff that you get, you know, if you're getting a carrying case and things like that. So you're looking at, you know, $3,000 more. I don't know if a pilot under 100 hours would appreciate this and what it does. And a pilot under 100 hours and just getting into the sport might want the rigidity of something a little bit stronger without crumple zones that are carbon fiber that can cost quite a bit if you mess up. So I think based on the price, they're both awesome choices. It's just really up to what your budget is. Before I let you go, the essential: zip the pocket open, slide the coffee mug in, zips back up. That, and it has this cool little smaller pouch right down here that I thought was really cool, just to put like a multi-tool in or something like that. Anyone else's power floats, like the stitching on these things is super cheap. Like the whole bottom's like ripped out, I think, on like my first flight, and now the tops are starting to rip out. I'm gonna have to take it to a seamstress to figure this out. But these little casings are sewn really weakly. Pretty disappointed in those. However, I have seen them work in the last month twice with 2 pilots that went in the water. So they will definitely keep you chin up, chest up, because those gas tanks down there are always gonna have air in them. And if you go in the water, it's going to push your face down, no matter what model you have. The gas tank will always push you face down. So that's why you want to have power floats, so that you get additional buoyancy in front of you so that it counterbalances and actually shoves that gas tank like under the water so you can get your head above water.
I was finally putting this video together and I noticed that I never filmed an outro. And of course I'm putting this video together maybe like 6 months, man, no, even longer than that. It's like 8 months later. I have almost 100 hours on a Scout now, and I can honestly say that's probably the only machine I'll ever fly from now on out. Definitely makes a world of difference. Machines out there that are comparable. But if you like these reviews, I don't normally do them, but if they're helpful, go ahead and hit the like button. Maybe drop me a comment, ask me a question down below. I'll try to get to them as best I can. Originally, I just kind of made this video because my mom, my family member, was asking me, why the heck did you need a new paramotor? And just kind of wanted to let her know that it had a safety aspect to it and a performance aspect to it and a cool looking factor aspect to it. Oh, and since this recording, I now know 3 pilots that have been in the water, yours truly as well. And I know Team Fly Halo did an excellent job of going through that. I never really watched any of those videos, so I was in the water, but I highly recommend checking out that series. And if you want to see a full version of going in the water with a paramotor on your back, completely unplanned, in probably some of the worst conditions ever, let me know. Maybe I'll get around to editing that video.
Drop my coffee! Look at that, I got an Uber ride. I didn't get to it in time. It looked like it was really far away.